The night, in the medieval world, was not as we know it now. It was heavier, thicker, closer. There were no streetlights humming in the distance, no glowing rectangles to keep company. When darkness fell, it truly fell, like a curtain drawn tight across the sky. For peasants in a small English village or farmers in the French countryside, night was a living thing. The moon moved quietly over thatched roofs. Dogs barked once or twice, then thought better of it. And somewhere beyond the fields, an owl began its lonely sermon. In such a world, sleep came differently. It came in two halves, like two chapters of a book with a pause in between. They called them the first sleep and the second sleep. It was not strange to them. It was simply what the body did. Before clocks, before gaslight, before electricity, time was told by rhythm, by roosters and bells, by the sun and the stars. And in the quiet of those long medieval nights, people did not sleep straight through till dawn. They slept in two shifts. The first would begin not long after sunset. After a day of labor, of plowing and pounding, of spinning and stirring, sleep came easily. The first sleep lasted about 4 hours. Then, quite naturally, people would wake, around midnight or so. But they were not alarmed by their wakefulness. It was a normal part of life. The dark hours between sleeps were called the watch, a strange little island of wakefulness floating in the sea of night. During the watch, the world felt oddly alive. Some might stoke the fire and add a log. Others might pray quietly by the flickering of a tallow lamp. In some houses, people talked in low voices. Couples shared the soft kind of conversation that only happens when the world is sleeping. Letters and diaries from the time even mentioned this. People spoke of the first sleep, as casually as we might say after dinner. It was a time for reflection, for small thoughts, for soft work. Some mended clothes, some tended to animals. Mothers might feed their babies. Monks rose for midnight prayers, the matins. Even in cities, before the rise of the factory whistle, the night was still divided. Bakers began their work in the in-between hours. Guards made their rounds. And peasants, awake in their cottages, often believed the night itself was listening. There was a sense of stillness, the kind that made sound travel farther and time move slower. After an hour or two, when the logs burned low and the air grew colder, sleep returned. The second sleep. This one was deeper, softer. People said dreams were stronger then, and perhaps they were, the mind wandering farther, freed from the noise of the day. The second sleep carried you through until dawn, until the first crowing of the rooster, until the pale gray light crept through wooden shutters, and then, slowly, life began again. Modern scientists have studied this curious pattern, and the body, it seems, remembers. When people are left in natural darkness, no screens, no artificial light, they begin to sleep like the peasants did. 2 parts, a sleep, a waking, another sleep. In experiments, volunteers placed in dim light for weeks began to drift into biphasic sleep naturally. Their bodies wanted it. It turns out, the in-between period, that quiet wakefulness, is not restlessness. It's a different kind of rest. A slow, meditative state between dreaming and waking, a place where the brain releases prolactin, the same hormone that brings calm after feeding or intimacy. In other words, it's peaceful. Imagine that. A society where everyone woke up in the middle of the night and instead of panicking, simply existed. The watch was a strange little pocket of time, half dream, half reality. Some historians think this was when dreams were discussed, even interpreted. You'd wake, remember what you saw, talk about it. then drift back to finish the dream. There were also darker sides. The watch was when fears crept in. Witches, thieves, demons, or the unknown noises outside the door. In some folk tales, spirits moved most freely between first and second sleep. It was, after all, a time when the living world paused and the other began. But even so, people were not afraid of it. It was familiar, the kind of fear you learn to live alongside. The darkness was an old friend, and then, over time, we forgot it. When clocks began to rule the night, when candles grew cheaper and gaslight flickered in the streets, people began staying awake later, stretching the day longer. The watch shrank. The first and second sleeps melted into one long stretch. And by the 18th and 19th centuries, the very idea of first sleep sounded strange. It faded quietly, like so many small pieces of the past do, unnoticed, unmissed, until centuries later when someone finds a line in an old diary and wonders, why did they sleep like that? There is a sadness to progress. It shines brightly, yes, but it also blinds. For centuries, people moved with the rhythm of the sun and the moon. The first sleep, the watch, the second sleep. It was a quiet choreography of human life. But then, something began to change. It began with firelight, then candles, then oil lamps. Each invention stretched the evening a little longer. Each flame pushed back the darkness a little further. By the 17th century, cities began to glow. Not bright, not yet, but enough that the night was no longer whole. Taverns stayed open later. Markets buzzed after sunset. People began reading, writing, sewing, things once reserved for daylight hours. Night became a time to be productive. And slowly, the stillness of the watch, that gentle island between sleeps, disappeared. By the time gaslight arrived in London, and later electricity in the 19th century, the natural rhythm of darkness was shattered. Sleep became something to fit around work. The body still longed for its two parts, but the world no longer allowed it. The invention of the mechanical clock changed everything. Before, time had been soft, measured by the movement of stars or the tolling of a church bell. Now it was hard, sharp, ticking, in iron and gears. Factories demanded early risers and strict hours. Workers could no longer wake naturally after first sleep. They had to sleep straight through the night to rise with the factory whistle. Sleep was compressed, a single unbroken block, squeezed to fit the schedule of the machine. Even language forgot. The phrase first sleep vanished from speech. Waking at midnight became a problem, not a pause. Doctors began to call it insomnia. What had once been peaceful, even sacred, was suddenly a symptom. But the body is an ancient creature. It remembers old rhythms even when the mind forgets. Have you ever woken in the middle of the night, not anxious, not alert, just quietly awake, and felt that strange calm, that odd clarity? That's the watch, returning. A ghost of an older rhythm still living inside you. Anthropologists and sleep researchers have seen it happen again and again. Put people away from light, no screens, no lamps, no constant glow, and the old pattern returns within weeks. They fall asleep early, wake gently around midnight, sit in silence for an hour or two, then drift back to the second sleep as naturally as breathing. It's as if part of us still lives in the 14th century. In medieval prayer books, there were devotions written for the time between sleeps. They were not hurried. They were quiet, personal, meant for candlelight and soft voices. Some scholars think this period was deeply spiritual, a kind of meditative half-waking. You were rested from the first sleep, but still far from the day. The world outside was silent. The soul, they thought, could speak most clearly then. Peasants prayed for good harvests, for healthy children, for forgiveness. Monks chanted in the dark, their voices echoing down stone corridors. And lovers whispered, because in that hushed in-between world, even whispering felt like a sacred act. It wasn't just sleep, it was ritual. Today, our midnights are different. They hum with electricity, screens glow, clocks blink, cities pulse, and never rest. We chase sleep like a prize, yet run from the darkness that nurtures it. We fill every silence with sound, every pause with motion, and yet, the body remembers. Maybe that's why some people wake at 2 or 3 a.m. They lie there, restless, not realizing they're doing something their ancestors did for centuries. They think something's wrong with them. But really, something ancient is trying to return. Lately, some researchers and quiet corners of the internet have begun to rediscover the art of biphasic sleep. They say, what if we stop fighting it? What if, instead of forcing ourselves back to sleep immediately, we embrace the wakefulness? Read right, meditate, breathe, let the mind wander softly in the watch. It's not a cure or a trend, just a remembering, a way to live a little more gently with the body's oldest rhythm. When we lost the first sleep, we didn't just lose a pattern. We lost a relationship with the night. We forgot how to sit with darkness, how to let it cradle us, rather than frighten us. We forgot the quiet labor of those hours, tending the fire, mending a torn shirt, whispering prayers no one would ever hear. We forgot that sleep used to be a conversation, not a transaction. A dance between wakefulness and dreaming, between the body and the world. And perhaps, if we learn to listen again, really listen, we might find that the night still has things to teach us. So tonight, when you wake in the middle of the night, don't be afraid of it. Don't reach for the clock or the phone. Just listen. Listen to the silence hum, to the breath of the world, slow and steady. You're not broken. You're ancient. Your ancestors are there in the stillness, sitting by a dim fire, wrapped in wool blankets, listening to the wind press against wooden shutters. They are awake too in their first watch. And in that quiet hour, across centuries, you are together. So sleep and wake and sleep again. The night was never meant to be one thing, it was always two.